So welcome back everyone. I'm just on a walk. I totally forgot to record something in the morning and I'm just walking to the city for my daily coffee after lunch. It's now like 1:30 p.m. I already prepared a bit before. A little bit. I'm playing against Luca Moroni today, a very strong grandmaster from Italy. I think his peak was like 2600. Now he's around 2550. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll try to stay solid and yeah. So welcome to the recap of the game, and what happened was pretty crazy, so let's have a look at the game. I had the black pieces against Moroni and he went c4, e6, and now he did surprise me a bit by going g3. Usually he goes for knight c3 when some of these lines would have come on the board, so this is what I prepared for here, but he went for g3, which I was a bit surprised since he doesn't go there that often. Before the game I actually didn't prepare that much. I only knew I'm gonna play d5, bishop g2, knight f6, and here, yeah, I didn't gather any thoughts before the game. I just thought either I will go bishop e7 or d4, and I just decided on the board. So I spent like 5 minutes here, and then I decided today I feel more like going bishop e7. And my opponent also told me that he did prepare for d4, so it's probably good that I went for the more solid bishop e7. My opponent castle, and now he went b3. d4 would transpose to the Catalan, which I would have been fine with since I checked it recently for black. But he did went b3. This is actually what I play with white myself. And it's a bit annoying because white always has like a slight pressure in these sort of positions. But black is also very solid. I went b6. Other moves are d4, which is quite complicated. After e3, c5, there are all sorts of ideas for white, like knight e5, which I also give in my course for chess base, by the way, which will come out soon. So if you're interested in that from the white side, definitely check that out. I went b6. Now he went knight c3, which is a bit of an unusual move order. Bishop b2, bishop b7 is the standard line. When here with white, I go for c takes d5. I also had a game in the Olympiad here, by the way, where I also did a recap. So if you want to have a deeper dive in this line, definitely check that one out. So cd5 is one of the moves. e3 is also like this very old way of playing the position when white will just go knight c3, queen e2, and then something like rook d1 and rook c1, which is pretty playable as well. But he went for knight c3, bishop b7, and now d4, which has also gotten quite some traction recently. But it's quite a newer way, I would say, of playing the position. Usually white waits a little bit with going d4. I went knight bd7, he played bishop b2, and now c5. So here he played knight e1, and I knew this idea, but I only knew it with this move order. Here I knew this move knight e1, which does look a bit strange, but white simply opens up the diagonal for the bishop, and now I can never take on c4 because the bishop on b7 is hanging, and it's actually not so easy to break this pin for me, because to protect the bishop I would have to make some strange moves like rook b8 or queen c8 or queen b8, which I don't really want to make. And after knight e1 here, I knew that knight e4 is the move for black, one of the best moves. And he played it here, knight e1, and I still went knight e4 since the whole idea seemed just correct for me to go for this. It's also not the only way. I guess I could also play something else. I guess rook c8 also looks logical. But I wanted to break this kind of pressure on the bishop on b7. Here he went knight c2, which surprised me a little bit. I thought he would take on d5 here right away. When I considered two options. The first one was to take on c3 and then take on d5 with the bishop. When I felt like this position here is a little bit worse for me, but I thought it should be somewhat okay. I do have this isolated pawn on d5, but his squares are a bit weak on the king side a little bit, even though that doesn't matter that much, I would say. But I think this move b3 can often be an issue because sometimes I have bishop a3 later on. So this would be very solid for me as well. The other idea would be to take back ed5 here, I think, which will, I guess, lead to somewhat similar positions than the game. But he went knight c2 first, now went knight f6, and here he took on e4, and actually black has a very interesting choice here. I took knight takes e4, but also d takes e4 is very possible. Just deliberately doubling the pawns, but now the bishop on g2 is completely out of the game. And yeah, this would have also been possible. I just was a bit afraid of some endgames like this. where often this doubled pawn is not that great, and white has some chances with a possible passed pawn on the queen side. So I took back with the knight. Now c takes d5, e takes d5. At first I was thinking about taking on d5 with the bishop or with the queen, but here the issue was after knight e3 I probably have to move the bishop again, when this pin on the knight and the bishop again looks very very unpleasant for me. So I took back e takes d5, now knight e3, and here I went bishop f6, which in hindsight was maybe not the best idea, because when I played it I saw knight g4, and at first, so this was the game, at first I wanted to take on d4, but then I realized that this is just absolutely ridiculous to go here, because black has no active play at all here, and white is simply maybe not much better, but at least slightly better, because the pawn on d5 is now really weak, and white can always attack it with knight e3. So I realized that then, and after knight g4 I simply went back. Still, nothing much went wrong for me, but from there, therefore, it might have made more sense just to go rook e8 right away. I was also shocked to see that the computer here suggests moves like rook e8, simply giving the bishop on f6, which looked absolutely ridiculous to me during the game. But it does make some sense, because I often have ideas now to play for the light squares. For example, if I get to push c4. I saw queen d3, for example. It felt like it looks logical, but it's already a big mistake because of c4. And I guess he cannot take here all because I have knight d2 in the end. So this was very interesting that this is possible, and yeah, white has a hard time consolidating, because also e3, for example, always runs into bishop a6 when the rook is hanging and he cannot move because of queen f2. So this is quite interesting. I didn't even think about this during the game at all. I went back bishop e7, now rook c1, rook e8, and rook c2, which has 2 points. The first one which he played in the game is queen c1 followed by rook d1. The other one, in some cases, queen a1 is also an idea. But here with my bishop already on f8, it makes a bit less sense, because I'm anyway protecting the pawn on g7. He played queen c1 and now a5. I think a very important idea. That's also why I didn't move my rook to c8 earlier, which might have looked logical as well. But I think it's quite important for black to get counterplay on the king side here, on the queen side. With a4, when after taking on b3, first of all I have rook a2 ideas then, and also the pawn on b3 will be a bit soft. I can target that, for example, with queen d7, queen b5 then, after exchanging here. So that were some of the ideas. He went rook d1, I went a4, and here things started to go wrong with him by taking on c5. I took on b3 first, and then took on c5 back, and now I always have queen b6 targeting the weak pawn on b3. So taking on c5 was a bit too hasty. He should have gone knight e5 and just kept the pressure here. And here he's maybe still a little bit better, but it shouldn't be that much of an issue. Now he's threatening to take on e4, so I'd probably have to go back with the knight. But still, my position is very solid. I will take on b3. I could also take here right away, and then go knight f6 back. Still looks pretty acceptable for me, I would say. But he took on c5, I took on b3. I could also take on c5 right away. I thought it doesn't make that much of a difference. Took on b3, took on c5 now, and he went queen f4. And queen b6, as I've said. Now I'm targeting the pawn on b3, and I also have some ideas with c4 sometimes, opening this diagonal when the pawn on f2 can sometimes be attacked, and also therefore f3, which would kick out the knight on e4, now almost never works, because I'm simply pushing c4, and yeah, with check, and then all of my pieces are coming into the game. Here he went rook d3, which was already quite a serious mistake. He should have gone knight e5 right away, which I also thought about, but didn't see what happens after f6. Knight d7 was my calculation, queen b3, when I think I just thought that I'm winning a pawn. I don't know what I'm missing. Let me just see. Okay, apparently there's queen c1 here, which, yeah, white will have some chances, I guess, to equalize, because he's intending to take on e4 and then on c5. But yeah, I did not see this at all, and I'm not risking anything here, that's for sure. So white is already looking for a draw here. But he went rook d3, which looks logical just to protect the pawn on b3, but this is just a bit too slow. Now I went rook a2, which is a good move. And yeah, now I'm already threatening things like c4, because now after c4, b takes c4 never works, because rook b2 is there. And yeah, rook a2 was a good move. I had to calculate some moves here. For example, white had some ideas with bishop takes g7. When if I would take back, white would win an exchange. But here I thought I can take on c2. When I had to see knight h6 check, king g7, queen f7, and now king takes h6 when I thought I'm simply winning. I'm 2 pieces up. The important thing was just not to go to h8 because then there's queen g8 with checkmate. So these were my calculations here, which I guess turned out to be correct. He did went knight e5, and now happened like the shocking thing of the game. After queen e6, I offered a draw here, and I have basically a completely winning position, but during the game I just didn't realize it. So my psychology behind this was I was down to 10 minutes, my opponent had 20 minutes, and I saw some attacking ideas for him still, because the bishop on b2 is potentially dangerous. His pieces are somewhat in the attack, and I felt like he has anyway chances to make the draw here for sure. And with such a low time for me, I'm the one risking here. But it's just ridiculous. I mean, it really doesn't take a genius to figure out that black is the one in the driver's seat here. And yeah, I'm quite I'm not happy at all for doing this, especially since my team is probably now in a bad spot for the match situation. So yeah, that was just completely ridiculous from my part. But yeah, I need to have like a prohibition for offering draws for the rest of the tournament. I'm now 5 games in the tournament, 5 draws. It's starting to be a bit too much, especially if I'm like winning like this. But yeah, let me talk you through what were my thoughts here. So I have to do something about the pawn on f7 since it's hanging, and queen e6 seemed like the most logical choice for me. I also spent 10 minutes here, which is also not that great because it's probably like the only move. I was also thinking about moves like queen f6, but this I felt like white is super happy to come to an endgame. And yeah, in the endgame, he's probably really not risking anything. So queen e6 looked logical. Now I have the threat of rook takes b2. Let's say white does nothing. I have rook b2, queen e5, and I simply won 2 pieces for the rook, which should be very good for me. What I was thinking mostly about and what I was scared of was firstly bishop h3, this idea, because I cannot take on h3 because queen f7 and queen e8 is winning for white. I saw that I have queen e7, but still, even here, I had basically no idea what's going on. Knight d7, for example, seemed interesting. When I think here there was c4 for white, which for black, which the computer shows like -3 because the bishop will probably open up. And yeah, objectively, it's lost for some reason. Even though, as a human, again, it's not that easy to figure it out, especially if you have 10 minutes on the clock. But it does make some sense because white's pieces are a bit strange. My rook on a2 is also fantastic. And yeah, therefore, this would be good for me. So bishop h3, queen e7 is good. What was also part of the calculation was bishop takes e4, d takes e4, and now rook d7. When I think I somewhat missed the idea with bishop c8 here, and after rook f7, I can take on b2, rook takes b2, and here, not the obvious move, queen takes e5, because, okay, after queen e5, rook e5, black would be doing pretty well, but white is even winning with rook takes f8, and after rook f8, queen e5, white is simply a queen up. But what I think I somewhat missed is here that I can go bishop d6 when white is just completely collapsing. I'm taking on e5 next, when all of his pieces are hanging. Rook on b2 will hang, rook on f7 will hang, queen on f4 will hang. So here he could just basically resign after bishop d6. The computer was showing some defense here with rook d2. This was apparently the best, which should also lose, I think, pretty obviously. Now rook b2, queen e5, takes, rook d8. When there was some very accurate win for black, but I think the most obvious way is probably to go bishop e6. And I was checking this now with the engine, and now rook d5. And this endgame, which maybe it's a draw, but okay, white will suffer for many more moves to come. And I would say, practically speaking, it's probably very hard to defend for black. For white, black will just expand on the king side,
I was checking a little bit. It's actually a very interesting endgame. Let's say white does nothing like this, and now white just waits. And it seemed like the what was I even doing? The rook was hanging on before for a couple of moves. Let's say rook a4, and this endgame seemed pretty interesting to me. I was clicking around here a bit now, and it seemed like the engine is giving like minus 1.3 or something. So maybe the computer will hold it. But the winning plan for black was, I think, pretty instructive. So let's say white does simply nothing and allows black everything. And with everything, I mean the computer wants to go for a setup like this. Let's say king g2. And now the computer wants to put the bishop on f3 and then to push g5. And if you manage to get this with black, it's probably already pretty simply winning. And yeah, maybe the computer will hold it at some point. You would need to analyze it quite deeply, this endgame. But I think practically speaking, it's almost lost. And if this is like the only thing white can do, or like the best thing white can do, I'm very upset that I offered a draw here. I think it's just pretty unacceptable. And yeah, I was also thinking about some other moves like knight f3, but also here I guess I could always go for something like d4, but there's probably something stronger as well. c4 again is like almost over already. But like in the game, it's not that obvious, because you see moves like knight d4 and then the queen is hanging, and yeah, it's still not entirely clear. But as I said, it doesn't really take a genius to figure out that black is in the driver's seat here. So yeah, I'm pretty upset about this. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess time pressure. I need to play a bit faster in the future games, and yeah, now I'll try to get some rest, and hopefully the upcoming games will offer more than just draws, and hopefully I will also be in a better like fighting spirit. So yeah, I'm very upset what happened now, but nothing I can do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's recap. Hope you found it instructive. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow for the next recap. So see you then, guys.